we will now introduce our fantastic panel. We have 3 brands that are kind of like, oh, I wish I created that. And tonight we're going to hear about how they've done it. So we have got Celia from Dame for Good, a multi-award winning sustainable period product brand of business. We've got Nathan from Denzel's, which is a healthy snacks for dogs that's making waves and has been invested in by Holly Branson. And we have got Tom from Nice and Serious, a creative work agency, work that the world needs, nice and serious. So if you're here, you're all here, just like that. Boom. Good evening, everybody. How are we doing?
Good, thanks. Very good.
Yeah, very well.
Very good. Welcome to the Virgin Startup stage. So we've got 50 years of Virgin building brands, and we're all in the early years of it, but already learned a lot and demonstrated a lot of great role modeling. And I thought what we'd start with is a quick fire round of our favorite brands. And for those watching and listening in, if you want to answer these questions as well, just drop them into the chat as we go. It'll be great, because the more we share here, the better. So we'll start off with current favorite brands that have, like, maybe a favorite brand that's around a product or service that isn't necessarily that exciting. So maybe a boring everyday product or service, but a brand that you really love. Celia.
Mine is minor figures. I just think, like, milk, who would have thought? I know Oatly is doing it as well. Like, who would have thought you could have made milk fun? I think what minor figures and Oatly are doing are incredible. And
then minor figures, an oat-based milk brand.
Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. Tom.
I at the moment am crushing on Wild deodorant. Deodorant's a bit of a kind of underdone brand, or it's done very heavily in like Unilever space, but I love their model of the beautiful aluminium canisters and getting regular post out to their product. Works well, just looks lovely. And I used to buy Tom's deodorant one from the States, but that was kind of like ugly design and packaging and plastic. So very happy with them, and quite affordable as well, actually. So
I believe it or not, Tom, I rolled on some Wild 20 minutes ago, just for tonight, because there's so many people in this room with me. But yeah, you're right. It's very clever, and the subscription model, which we'll talk about tonight in branding, works beautifully with them, and they've nailed it. If you want to look at a great Instagram consumer brand campaign, check out Wild. Nathan, what about you?
I did actually have Wild, but I did have a backup just in case. Which, mine is can of water, which I guess like says what it does, but it's like a can of water. And I think that, you know, what's more, like, can't get more boring than water, really. But they've managed to sort of like put it in a can, make it very different, and like kind of freshen up the fridge space, which I think is really impressive. All
right, so we talked about boring everyday things, but brilliant brands. Now, how about brands that we often see new brands that people get really excited about, but they're in the premium space. What about a brand that's sort of more affordable to the whole market, but is also brilliant? Celia.
Well, I think kind of, again, and I don't know if kind of like teeters the border of this, but Nudie Jeans, like, I'm such a fan of any kind of jeans company that has repair shops around town that you can just send your jeans into. Like, that is exactly what you want as a consumer. You want to know that your clothing brand isn't ripping you off just to buy more clothes, and I love that about them.
Nice. Tom?
Again, I think it's quite hard to find a brand that's really bottom price, and there's probably a reason for that, because a lot of other things are subsidized and have impact on the environment and stuff. But I would actually say Pip and Nut, actually, the kind of peanut butter brand's pretty affordable. Like, I've got 2 young twin boys. I go through a lot of peanut butter, and you can buy their big like kilogram tubs like really affordably, and they're lovely. So
Holland and Barrett wholesale for your Pip and Nut big tubs. That's where you go, rather than buy them very small in Waitrose for £8.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just about finding the right shop. Nathan, what about you?
I would go with something like, maybe it's a bit of a trick answer, but something like Monzo, where, like, you know, it's free to use and anyone can get involved, but it's kind of, again, like a lot different from a normal banking, and it's kind of trying to like freshen it up and make that a lot more fun. So that would be what I'd go with.
Nice. And for those interested in this space, we had a good chat recently with Richard Walker, who's the MD of Iceland Supermarket here in the UK, which serves a huge number of people every week who have a budget of around £25 a family. And so he's all about balancing out brands, quality branding and experience, and environmental and social impact on a price point. So if you're interested in like, you know, food and that world at that sort of level, that's amazing leadership from Iceland. Okay, final quick brand question. Best personal, like, what's the best brand experience you've had recently?
For me, it's Elvis and Cress. I love them. Again, going down the sustainability route, like they wholeheartedly believe in repurposing things. All their products are made out of old fire hoses, and when they send them to you, they send them in old coffee sacks. So every single part of the process is really sort of speaks to who they are, and that's what I love. There's no compromise.
And they've been upcycling old fire hoses for what, 10, 15 years now?
Yeah, they're absolutely incredible. They just live and breathe their values, which I love.
Yeah, great example. Tom?
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of ethical brand chat tonight, I think. So I am a big fan of Finisterre. I didn't put this on specifically, and I don't work for them, but I had a really nice interaction with them when I got this a couple of weeks ago, actually. It came in their new, I think it's seaweed packaging, and it was just amazing. It's just a lovely moment where you put the packaging in the sink and you pour like boiling water over it, and it just dissolves into the plug hole, which is just wicked to see, like plastic just disappearing. So, or kind of plant-based plastic disappearing. So yeah, big fan of Finisterre. And
creating a visual education and entertainment for children as well. On that, my favorite packaging is Rapa Nui at the moment, which is like, they've got this all paper, but it comes with this like beautiful doodles on, and my kids just spend all their time doodling on. They get more value out of the packaging than I do out of the t-shirt. Nathan, brand experience.
Something that I use weekly, I'd say like Gusto, which I really like. I think that, you know, for a company that's growing so quickly, like they are really trying to make the right changes to be environmentally and sustainably conscious, and like it sort of gets rid of that choice and the boring food, and also just the wastage element, which is something I really like. So yeah, a brand that I like the experience of. You don't have to go to the shop so much.
And so another great example. And so what I've heard already from these quick stories is that there's a strong values piece in there. There's something around like how it makes you feel, and then of course there's the practical element of like, what have you bought this for? So there's a lot of lessons already to take from those answers. But now let's talk about our own brands and stories. And if we can dive into a bit more detail about your journeys, and then go, Celia, if we can start with you. Take us back. So you were reading history of art. Like, when did this journey and this idea and this brand that's now really creating some waves begin for you?
So yeah, I basically spent my 20s in the art world, never thinking that I would start my own company. Had a baby, thought, right, I want to do something that feels like it's got purpose behind it, but still thought I am not a founder at all. And then suddenly, through a kind of chance conversation with a friend who's now my co-founder, as you do, got to talking about tampons. And I'd always known that I wanted to do something that supported women, but I had no idea that it would be tampons. And actually, the brand that we created, first of all, wasn't Dame. It was something called Sanitary Owl. It was a pun, basically, because we were a bit pissed when we made it up. And it was something that we ran with, but actually for a few years, we were selling other people's products. It was a subscription service, but the pun eventually ran dry. And when we knew that we wanted to change what we were doing and create our own products and make sure that the products that we were putting out there are environmentally friendly, so we created the world's first ever reusable tampon applicator. We knew that we wanted a different name and a different brand for it. And that's where Dame came up. And I think the name Dame, we wanted something that spoke to women and was instantly recognizable as being a female product, but at the same time had a big sort of weight of history. Like, we knew that we wanted a word that you needed to be dusted off the shelf, that people knew, but it had some kind of weird matriarch kind of tones of it. Okay. And that for us was really important to bring on board, because we really wanted to be a voice for women. We wanted to make sure that women are using more sustainable products than they're currently using. The majority of products on the market right now are filled with plastic, filled with chemicals, because they're not regulated in the EU. So literally you can put anything you want inside of them and not disclose the ingredients. So we wanted to make sure that we had something which was speaking in a very bold tone and a very truthful way. And so Dame was what came out of it. And we launched the reusable tampon applicator in 2018 on Kickstarter. did a lot better than we thought it was, and then properly launched on the market in 2019 and have been going ever since. And we've now got reusable pads, we've got pants coming out, and yeah, it's sort of been growing and growing.
It's an amazing story of what you've achieved in a really short, with a really challenging set of new things to communicate with people. Just on that kind of genesis of the brand itself. So you've explained a little bit about the name, but getting that voice, like the voice right, figuring out where to put the emphasis in the communications initially. I mean, if you take us back to your Kickstarter, how did you figure that out? Or was it very much you just were like, this is how I feel, and then here's the name and here's the product?
I think there's always going to be like an element of yourself and your personality that comes out in it. And, you know, we're talking about a category which anyone has to go into any supermarket and see, like the colors, the language. I mean, it's absolutely disgusting. It's like 80s ski suits all over. And we knew we wanted to move away from this kind of negative language where it's talking about discretion and talking about being fresh and all this really, really pejorative messaging. And so we knew we wanted bold and forthright language. We knew we wanted a color that wasn't overtly pink and girly, a color that spoke to, you know, anything from a 12-year-old girl all the way through to a sort of woman in her 50s, because essentially that is our target market. And coming up with those ideas, I think we were really lucky. We had someone who we brought on to help with the branding, who sat down with us and was just like, right, okay, what is your personality? What do you want this brand to be about? And through we started to build up.
And I think one of the most important things was, you know, we made sure that we were positioning ourselves very much away from what was already on the market.
Yeah, and that exercise of creating the personality and figuring it out, that sounds like a sort of thing that you would do in a workshop. But were you reading, like, going to workshops? Were you reading books, or were you just like, were you figuring it out as you go between you?
I think we were part figuring out, but we had an amazing freelancer who came and sat down with us and was like, right, I want you to think about this, write it all down. We'll come back again in a week or so and see what we feel. And that process was really important. And that we did in whenever it was 2018. And I have to say we've done it again since, because I think that's the really important thing, is your brand, like your personality, is always evolving. And we found it really important to always keep coming back to it and see, right, are these still our values? Is this still our voice? Something that has evolved and we want to change. But yeah, that process was really important from the get-go.
Yeah, get a good freelancer on board early on. That sounds like it really helped. Loads more I want to chat with Celia, with you about, and Dame. It's amazing. But let's jump across to Nathan now. So, Denzel's, where did the journey begin?
Well, the company started in July. It'll be 3 years old. But really, I'm one of the co-founders. The other co-founder is James, and Denzel is his dog. We are like best mates from uni. We met studying animal science and nutrition in Nottingham. Basically, we weren't clever enough to be vets, so we went and did a nutrition course about animals instead. And we sort of fell in love with it, realized that the two options were either go into sort of like the lab side or go down the more business route. And that was like a big interest of ours. So we went and both worked in the pet industry for about 5 or 6 years. And then we saw this boom in like healthy snacking for humans. So there was a big change in people like looking at the nutritional value, the explanation around the branding, and the way people could learn about it was a lot easier to digest. And, you know, we felt that, okay, why isn't this done properly in pet snacking and pet treats? You know, it's really confusing when you've got a new dog or a new pet. Like, how do you treat them? Like, you know, what do you do with them? How can you be the proper owner, and what can you feed them? So Denzel's was born, and it's all around proper education and proper nutrition, but also bringing a bit of like fun and, you know, sort of childish like behavior around having a dog. Like, whereas a lot of the pet brands, if you go down the grocery aisle, you'll see them, they're very corporate. It's the same dog on the pack. It's all very much the same. So we wanted to sort of bring that to life, and we have like cards in there, and we're running like books and all this sort of stuff. And we have Denzel as a character, and on one of our products, he's a wizard, and he teaches you how to, you know, do sit with your dog, and he's a policeman telling, you know, if your dog rummages through the bin, how do you stop that? Like, it's just a complete bit of fun. So yeah, that's a bit about us. And then
just jumping in, Nathan, it sounds so obvious, right? We're all sitting here like nodding along with the smiles on our faces, like, here's this dog telling you how to, you know, behave and like what he's up to. Like, it sounds so obvious that that's what a voice of like a healthy, happy pet product should be. But what do you think's changed? Like, why are we suddenly? Is it just it's like innocent? We're doing it one day, and then we're all like, oh, now we're going to talk to each other like we're, you know, in a cafe, or is it something bigger that's changed out there? And I'm sure, Tom, you have thoughts on this as well. But in terms of, you know, branding, it's all about building trust, obviously, and it used to be around, this is what we do, this is what we do, this is what we do. It was like the repetition would build trust and it's being seen everywhere. But now it seems to be a much more of an emotional connection. Were you thinking about this bigger picture piece when you were like, or was it just like, why is no one having more fun with a pet product?
Yeah, I think it's the latter. Like, we, you know, there's three of us that founded it. The other one is a bit like, we went and found a freelancer who we thought could bring the design to life. For us, we wanted to invest the money to launch instead of like going to shows and doing it that way around. We wanted to like bring the brand to life. So we went and found an illustrator, someone who can do all of that, and she's the third founder from a human side. And I think that we just all sat there and we're like all quite young. We were like, it's such an emotive category. People love their dogs, like they love their pets. It's a time where that makes you happy. Instagram's full of it. Why do none of the products reflect that? And like, we kind of just always turn around to each other and we're like, if we're not having fun and we're not like excited by the new launch or excited by the bit of branding, then, you know, then we're not going to do it. Like, and if people resonate with that, great. And if they don't, like, at least we're kind of doing what makes us happy.
Yeah, and Laura's just added to this. So she says, Denzel is so smart because it's the voice of the dog from the inside out. This is what's good for me, and is emotional versus this is how to tell you what to feed your dog. It's like the kind of Pixar animation of food.
It's true, and I think we, like a lot of small food and drink, especially startups, like the founders are kind of like the voice, and that's what people get to know and they enjoy that journey. Whereas for us, it's Denzel. Like, he is the face of everything and he talks to it. And we do get a lot of people reply to us as their dog as well, speaking to Denzel. So that's always an interesting conversation to have.
It's a great conversation. I also like the fact you just said your third human founder. You know, you got to give some good equity to the main canine. Tom, let's jump over to you. Tell us about your journey with branding and what you've been building at Nice and Serious.
Yeah, thanks Ben. So my journey started. I was training to be an environmental scientist about 20 years ago or so, and ended up being. I was incredibly passionate about issues like climate change and big kind of societal problems, and went off to study science communication to become a journalist and things like that. And I ended up doing this cycle ride across the country, towing low energy light bulbs, and made a little film about it. And got across the country and realized that sort of no one gave a shit about climate change. I mean, this was like 2006 or something like that. And I sort of realized it probably wasn't that people didn't care about it, but rather the way in which we were telling stories about climate change wasn't really landing with people. So me and the co-founder at the time decided to create an agency to try and tell more compelling stories about big social and environmental issues, or what we refer to as making creative work the world actually needs rather than selling shit it doesn't. So we created Nice and Serious back in 2008 to do just that, to kind of use the creative skills that you find in the advertising and creative industries, but try and apply them to charities and causes and progressive brands that can't normally access those creative skills. So that was the whole remit to behind Nice and Serious, and that's what we've been doing for the last decade. And obviously not only that, I guess what we deliver, the creative services, is very important to us, but also whether we could create a benchmark for what a sustainable agency looks like as well, and how we operate and the decisions we make as a business and brand ourselves.
And you are a BCorp, which we can come on to, but 2008 to 2021, so that's a decent chunk of time to be in this. What have you learned? I mean, obviously the conversation around climate change, now a crisis, has moved on significantly, both in terms of the scale of the problem, but also the engagement. But what have you learned about the branding journey over the last decade? And you now got so much business that you barely have time to come and do a panel chat like this, or is it now a lot more competition?
Yeah, I mean, God, if you the creative industries are a fundamentally terrible business model. If you are thinking about going into it, don't. I mean, ultimately, it's a people business, so it's very hard to scale, right? So, go into it if you're passionate about what you love doing, which for me was all around storytelling and creativity. Nice and Serious is fundamentally a lifestyle business. I get up, I love working with big progressive clients, telling stories for charities and things like that. That's what gets me going. I'm not doing this to try and create money. I think it's a challenging industry because you're constantly having to dance for your breakfast. Today, I've just been on 3 fucking pitches. It's exhausting. You don't know what's happening in 3 months' time, but it's also very life affirming. It's very fun. If you're a creative individual that gets stimulation from that, it's a wonderful industry to be in. But yeah, have I just answered your question, Ben, or have I just chatted?
Yeah, no, that is a great answer. It's making me think about like how let's get into the nitty gritty of branding itself, because we've kind of come to that point where we've shared our opening stories. So what's the definition, Tom, for you? And I mean, this is your bread and butter, I know, but it's also it's a big question. What's your definition of what a brand is? Just to, we've got 260 people here listening in who are all trying to figure out their own ways to get something or grow something in the world. And it's very noisy, whatever category you're in, even if you're trying to do something very different and disruptive like Nathan and Celia. So what's the definition, and how do you start the process?
Yeah, look, I mean, I did try and write something really intellectual here, but I've decided to pare this back. I mean, I think for me, how you would define a brand is essentially, what do you stand for? Like it's a business with a backbone. For me, a brand helps you decide what's a distraction and what's an opportunity. It's as much as a way to help you as the owner decide what you don't do as much as what you do. For me, the brands that actually last are those that stand for something and are willing to say no as they are to say yes and take opportunities. So
that's clear. And yet, just to gently push back, there are plenty of brands in the world, whether they're companies or even people that have had certain influence, that you could make a case for saying, well, they're pretty divisive. They're not necessarily trying to solve a real problem in the world. We've just had a president in the United States who's branded himself, right? So that's been very divisive. So is a brand always, in your definition, it is inherently trying to do something good or trying to make the world a better place?
No, I think it's a really good question, Ben, and not at all. I would argue that some of the strongest brands out there are the ones that are fundamentally unethical. If you look at Trump or anything like that, they are all brands in their own right, but they are very clear. Obviously, as an agency, Nice and Serious is all about doing good in the world. We stand for something in that respect. But equally, you could be a very divisive, very negative brand, but be very clearly positioned. And I would argue that is still a very, very strong brand. And there's a lot we can learn from those brands as well and apply that to a much more positive space too. And again, they're just very clear on who they're speaking to and who they're not speaking to, and they don't waste time. For me, that's what really defines them. And
it's the lack of care, like from a responsibility point of view, that is in some ways it's an advantage in that situation. So coming back to like the basics of the startup and branding, so you've got your definition of like this is what we stand for. what do you then do? So we've heard what Nathan and Celia did very instinctively with some, like, maybe it was the same freelancer who helped them both. Good early freelancer. But what are those first steps? Is it getting onto Squarespace or Canva and making a logo? Is it the visual identity? Is it like, oh, what's the personality of my brand? What do we stand for? What do we don't? Like, is there a good template that you would advise people working through, or is it just dropping a load of feelings down and just like trying to capture this in a creative way?
Yeah, look, I mean, if you're creating a new brand, you obviously don't need an agency at that point in time. I'd probably advise you not to if you're just starting out, unless you have vast amounts of sort of seed capital or something. But like, yeah, for me, it's about quick iterating at those early stages. Don't get too obsessed about the logo and the identity. That can easily change. I think exactly like Celia and Nathan have said, like, get together, talk about the organization you want to be, talk about the problems that you're fixing in the world. What issues are you fixing that's going to really help your kind of target audience, and try and encapsulate that. So there are loads of branding frameworks out there. Just Google them. Like, we talk about finding your purpose, your mission, your vision, your values. You can do all those sorts of things. You can do them yourself, or just get some critical friends along who are good communicators to help you kind of put that stuff together. But you just need to get it out into the world, start testing it in front of users, and then you can come back and refine it. It's exactly like Celia did. Like, you don't need to get it perfect off the bat. Otherwise, you're wasting way too much time and money before you start testing it with your audience, and then you can refine as you grow.
Great answer. And Celia, coming back to Damon, like that initial version of the brand that you put out into the world, how do you know that there's all these features and benefits, right, of everything that we do, and we're like, I've got to tell everyone everything straight away? But how did you decide which things to put up front, and what did you put up front to people to say, when you've got a strong set of values and mission, as well as a great price point and quality product, how do you fit it all in?
Totally. So for us, like, our three big things that we are concerned about is sustainability. It's the body and the chemicals and the things that you're putting inside of you, and it's the language and the way that you're spoken to. And for us, it was an exercise of, okay, like, let's go out there, let's look at obviously like the big players who are pretty obvious in what they're doing, and then let's look at the smaller challenger brands who are coming through, and look at what they're talking about, and then let's try and see where we can find our own little space. And for us, that very much was in that sustainability space, because there weren't really any people doing any meaningful work there. And that's where we decided to position ourselves initially. But as you go along, you realize that people then come to you for different things. So you do have to be, like you said, Tom, you have to be quite flexible. You have to be quite iterative to it, because as much as you want to be something, it's how your customer reacts to you. And so you've got to work alongside of that. And like, going back to your kind of, what is a brand? I kind of felt always like a brand is like a personality. It feels like dating. And as you're dating, you do have to slightly kind of adjust yourself, that if you're like shouting the whole time or like spitting food out of your mouth when you're like having supper, you have to kind of like slightly adjust yourself and pull it back. And that's the same kind of thing I always find with the brand, that you have to keep looking at who you're communicating to and adjust as you go along. But for us, yeah, it was definitely those sort of like core values were there, but it's like you said, just working out which ones you're putting front and center first.
And that relationship metaphor makes so much sense, because it, of course, what you're pointing towards there is that it's a relationship, not a one way. You're not just broadcasting, right? And you're learning about yourself in every conversation, in every part of the relationship. How do you then decide, in terms of the evolution of the brand and the iteration of the product and service, like which bit of feedback to take on versus like signal versus noise? Obviously, you've got data, you've got sales, you've got all the digital marketing information that we capture, you've got return customers, etc. That guides so much. But when you've got someone, like, for every 10 people that say they love it, and then someone says, oh, why are you being so preachy about this? Like, why can't it be the same price as this? Like, how do you know what to take on?
Oh yeah, and those neggy people are always really loud, really
in your
loud.
Own head, right?
In your own head, and they just sort of, they seem to come out, and you have to remind yourself, like, you are just a snapshot, and it's usually the angriest people who are the people who get in touch. I think there's a certain point where you, like you said, you do look at all the kind of facts and the figures, and then there's a bit where you slightly stick two fingers up at it and say, no, this is what I believe in. And there's a bit childish in you where it's like, well, it's my company, so we're just going to do it the way that we think we're going to do it, because it goes back to those values that you set out at the beginning. And this is what we believe in. And we can't really waver that much from it, because that's us, that's who we are. And if someone wants something else, they can go to somewhere else. But we believe that we not only have the right product, a premium, brilliant product that performs incredibly well, but we have the right heart and the right ethics and the right values. And so you kind of have to stand your ground a bit.
Yeah. And what I love about that is that when you are really clear about your ethics and values and all the way, and they don't shift, and you also have a great product because you've worked bloody hard to make it, then actually a lot of decision making around what your brand does next isn't that difficult. It's the implementation of it that becomes the challenge. Delva's just added into the chat here. I think it's a Bezos quote. Your brand is what other people say about you when you're not in the room. So if you'll just leave, well, we'll be honest about no. It's a good reminder, isn't it? Nathan at Denzel's, what's the how have you figured out how to, what's your definition of the brand? It's Denzel, right? So
I think we're not only that unique, but slightly different, where we are selling to someone who's not using it or consuming it in the sense. So, that's an angle that we look at. But I agree really with what was just being said, in the sense that I think it's about what you really believe in, and like you've got to just stick to it. And that doesn't mean that it can't change and evolve. Like, for instance, just to use us as an example, when we first started, we were all about the sort of education side, because that's what we believed that the market was lacking around, bringing things like the calorie to the front, bringing the ingredients to be more transparent, like talking about proper ownership, because we felt it wasn't there. And obviously we both are big believers in sort of the environment and doing things the right way. So we were already doing that through the way that we made the stuff with the ovens, and we upcycled the ingredients, and the packaging was plastic free. We were doing that, but we weren't talking about it. And then obviously, we were like, why aren't we talking about this? And obviously we brought that more to the front as well. So I think that we weren't scared to sort of evolve with it, but it was kind of like, it meant a lot to us still. So we wanted to bring that out and bring that to the front and talk about it. And we can always look at data. We can always look at like what we're being told is the next trend, but actually, so are much bigger companies than us. They're also looking at the same data. They have a bit more money than us to be spending on it. So, we don't want to fight that battle. We want to sort of fight what we believe in and just do as we wish. And like, ultimately, if that succeeds, we're having fun doing it. And if we make mistakes, then, it's our own mistakes to make. And that's something that we believe in.
Now we've got a whole load of questions coming in from everyone watching. Thanks for dropping them in. If you can't see them, you head to there's this a toggle across it where it says stage, and there's the chat and then the Q&A. So drop them into the Q&A, and then you can upvote each of them. So in a minute, I'm heading there and I'm going to rattle through, and it's going to be a random splattering of questions I'm going to take. But before then, I wanted to get an example from each of you of a successful brand campaign, communications, marketing project you've done with your business, and an unsuccessful one. So it'd be great to share a couple of examples with everyone. Celia, you're up for kicking off.
Yeah, I can. It's unsuccessful one. Wow, there's like so many ones which I think they're just like a lot of ads that you put out and you craft so much, and you think, oh, this is really going to cut through the noise, and then it lands and it's like, And that's where the beauty is. When they do land, you can just quietly like shuffle them away, and no one has to see them.
But it's the learning that's key. You want to get something, you want to learn from it, right?
Totally. And like the key is to just get them out quickly. Like just don't sit on them for too long, because if you craft and perfect them for too long, who knows what's going to resonate. For us, one which has been really successful was this bus campaign that we did a few months ago. We, as a really small brand, took a really big decision to go and advertise on 200 London buses. And we were very fortunate in the fact that we were doing it at a time where bus prices are cheap because it's COVID time and no one's really wanting to advertise. And so a 2-week campaign turned into a freebie of a 4-month campaign, which was great for us. But the big thing was we wanted to not only get us up on London buses, but we wanted to make a campaign about the campaign. So we put one of our users who had posted a picture of her with her tampon string hanging out in a very beautiful way. We asked her permission to put that on a London bus because we thought, this is incredible. This is one of our customers doing something that they already feel quite proud of. And it's part of what we want to do. We want to normalize this topic and this subject matter, because the most critical thing in order to get people onto more sustainable solutions in a topic where they don't really talk about it that much is to normalize it, is to get them to talk about it. So we put this on 200 London buses, and then also ran a PR campaign alongside of it to make sure that key publications were picking it up, the fact that this was the first ever tampon string to be shown on a London bus. And that extra noise that was generated around it meant that this wasn't just an audience in London viewing these buses, it was a much, much wider audience. And that for us has been really, really successful in just nudging our brand up that next level.
And it's it's making me think about the challenge that we all face when we're working our businesses every day. Is we're so focused on, as you just described, like polishing that ad, that great campaign, making it all look and work, and that, you know, you've got your data, like your funnel and all that stuff. And that's even before you've sold anything. So you're like, I hope it really works. And yet the bigger picture of like, why are we doing this? Why are we doing this? Why are we doing this? And then that image comes up, and you could have easily have just gone, oh, okay, that's, but the fact you paused and you were like, well, hold on a second. And then you brought it in and executed it really well. And the result was massive. That's a challenge, right? It's being able to keep a wide enough view. We're like, okay, how does this feel for someone who's watching or following this story? How do you put that into practice every day when you're consumed by running the business, a family, everything else that we're dealing with in life?
It's really difficult because I think also a lot of the thing where if you're really in the business, you already think that people know a lot about your business and know a lot about the subject matter. Like for us, it's a big education piece. Not very many people know that the majority of these products are made of plastic, that the majority of them they're not made of cotton. They're all sorts of other materials which you don't know about, and they can lead to all sorts of things like vaginal irritation and stuff which people just don't connect with. So you go into this, and if you've been working in it for a few years, you automatically start to think that people know this. So you, instead of sort of entry level getting them on, you already sort of skip 3 levels. Whereas I think it's always important to pull yourself back and be like, no, the majority of people are hitting you for the first time are going to be completely blind to what you're about. And so I think what we try to do is test it the whole time with new audience members, test it with people who aren't just the team who are living, breathing it. Because as soon as you bring it out into fresh eyes, fresh perspective, you start to see the flaws of where you're skipping a few stages. It's easier said than done, because obviously when you're running to a deadline, you're just like, quick, get anything out. Yeah. But definitely having that fresh perspective for us is always quite critical.
Yeah, and when you're testing, you want to avoid that kind of mum test trap, don't you, of asking the people who love you what they think about it, and they'll tell you it's wonderful or it's terrible, but it doesn't help, right? You've got to go to the real customers. Nathan, success and failure at Denzel so far?
I guess again, yeah, similar in terms of failures. There's often, you think you have these great ideas and you try them and it doesn't always work out the same. So what you have in mind, but I think it's like you said, it's important to try these things. Don't break the bank doing it, maybe. And you can make some learnings. I think one of the fun success ones we had is we had an idea to we have Christmas products for dogs. It is a thing, and it is quite a big thing. And we did a Christmas walk around Hyde Park and invited owners to bring their dogs and dress them up in Christmas jumpers. I think we had something like 500 like sausage dogs come down, and they were dressed up, and it obviously got picked up a bit by the media because it was an awful lot of people, because there would be like 2 or 3 people per dog and walking around, and we handed out loads of treats, and we stopped in one of the Whole Foods, so we sent them there to buy more. So that for us was just a lot of fun. And it worked really well. And again, we also, you know, brought our own people down to film that, and we use sort of like content around that to make content throughout the year. So even around, you know, even if it wasn't just like Christmas stuff with Christmas jumpers, we were just like getting pictures with the dogs and the treats and getting owners and like utilizing all of that stuff to make a lot of fun content that we could use all year round.
And I guess Denzel's a great example of like how to live, you know, build your business. He doesn't care about failing, does he? Just gets up, chases the next tennis ball, the next thing he's excited about. I want to talk to Denzel about his, you know, business plans.
Yeah, no, I should have brought.
IPO one day.
I should have got him on. Got him on.
It's all right. He'll be zooming soon. Tom, success and failure in the nice and serious sort of campaign world.
Yeah, good question. And I guess we don't necessarily run campaigns for ourselves. If that makes sense. We run campaigns for others, but. And I should probably also say that a lot of what we do isn't about driving sales or marketing a product. It's more around raising awareness of a cause. So, I mean, obviously it's a big part of what we do. So there's lots I could kind of pick on. I mean, probably like an interesting example would be some of the stuff we've done around social impact with Ben and Jerry's over the years. So we've launched, I mean, they're a really interesting brand to work with because they are so, they're so kind of vocal about the issues they care about, and they're not scared of going out of category, which is a really exciting kind of space to play in. So we've done some really fun campaigns for them when they've launched new products like One Sweet World, which was an ice cream where £1 from every sale went to support issues that promoted social inclusion. So we created a really big kind of film, kind of animated moment, which was timed to launch on the day that Trump was inaugurated back in whenever it was 16 or 17, which was all about story of a sour world turned sweet, a kind of fictional land overrun by the lemon party, and we made a Trump lemon. It was really good fun, but that was something that landed particularly well because it was a very fun, playful message at a time of almost like mourning and outpouring, and that was one of the most organically shared pieces of content they've ever created. But equally, sometimes we'll do stuff with them where, you know, sometimes we've done stuff around refugee and refugee resettlement, and we've done some what I would consider some really nice work, but there are some issues that culturally are just such hot potatoes. Like when we did a campaign called Home Safe Home, and it was all about giving refugees the right to work when they're waiting for their asylum status. And I thought we produced a really lovely piece of content for that, but it kind of landed well, but then God, the trolls just came out for it. And you know, you can imagine their PR teams have a nightmare when they're getting like, normally they're pretty cool with that stuff, but you know, sometimes we'll just touch on a nerve with a really divisive subject. And that's part of the risk when you're taking on big, complicated, systemic society.
But I kind of like that example maybe to one side, but there's also the point, right? If you don't create this, I mean, it's the cancel culture and the divisiveness. We're all really tired of it, and a lot of us. That's what I'm scared about. A lot of conversations being shut down because people are like, "Sod it, it's too much. I can't cope with it." Versus actually, we need to have the truths told. And you know what I love about these stories tonight is they're just told in a creative way rather than maybe an aggressive way. Just what I got, you made me think of one example. I've been part of accidentally in the last 24 hours, a crazy story, which I have to share. So Greenpeace released an ad yesterday about the so much of our recycling in the UK, depressingly not being recycled and being shipped offshore, especially to parts of Asia, and dumped, and causing significant social and environmental problems. I'm sure the UK is not the only country that does this, but we're clearly really bad at it. Anyway, this ad is brilliant. It's like done as an animation, Boris Johnson drowning in plastic, literally. And I'm going to share my tweet on the chat. I saw this ad, and like all of us, I'll be like, what a cool ad. I think I wrote, what a devastatingly brilliant ad. I've been on Twitter for 10 years. This has gone viral, like my tweet of someone else's ad, and it's been viewed like 400,000 times on my Twitter profile in 24 hours. Anyway, so it's really interesting because I like my relationship with Greenpeace now has completely changed from one of like I've supported a few of their campaigns, and now I feel like I'm part of it because I've accidentally channeled, like influenced the campaign positively, completely by accident. But yeah, it's kind of weird. And now I've got all this debate about plastic going on my timeline. Anyway, and I'm like, I run a book club. What's going on?
You're now an environmental influencer. We'll be contacting you.
Finally. So here we go. We've got 10 minutes to rattle through a load of questions. The one that's been voted up, and just jump in, any of you, whoever feels I've got an answer. William wants to know, where can I find this this one freelancer that you've always a suitable freelancer to help you with creating your marketing and branding? Where do you look for freelancers?
I mean, that one came through like a contact of my co-founders. I think we really wanted to have creatives who were women, because we were producing a product majority for women, and that was really important for us. And someone who also got the whole sustainability thing, and this was quite a few years ago when it still wasn't that kind of fashionable to get. So you've got to have someone who can meet and understand people. So it's speed dating. You meet a few people, see who you connect with, see who really gets your company, because if they're trying to do, then they're going to really easily translate it for you.
Perfect. Any other tips on freelancers?
I guess like our example is we built sort of a library of other brands not in the same category that we loved, and I guess the smaller ones we just reached out to. And don't be scared to do that. And actually, some of them did come back to us, and that is how we found ours. So we have Bear Fruit or Bear Nibbles, the kids company, the snacking one. That's like a big inspiration for us, and you'll see some similarities between the brand because we reached out to them, and that's how we met the girl who does our freelancing, and she's come on board and she does all of that. So yeah, that would be my advice. Don't be scared to reach out to other brands that you aspire to be.
And drop into communities as well that you're part of, and like, this is what we're doing. Escape the city, always great for these kind of people. Tom, did you have anything to add?
Yeah, I was going to say, look, I mean, if you want to go super cheap, you've got things like Fiverr that you guys will be aware of. The quality is going to be suspect, and I don't think you'll get that deep relationship you need. Like you need to start following accounts like It's Nice That, some big design blogs, and you'll start to see the young emerging talent. Just start following them on Instagram and things like that. It's how we often find a lot of the freelance designers will use as well. So, it's just important to follow, be part of those communities, and reach out and just compliment people, start a conversation, and then they're much more likely going to want to come on that journey with you.
Yeah, exactly. And spend £10 a month on Canva Pro. I'm not a shareholder, but that changed my life. Kim wants to know, how much resource do you need to become a B Corp? Big question. Is it worth doing when you're a startup small? So just quickly share when you became B Corps and what that was like.
We became a B Corp when we'd already been running the old business Centrial for a few years, but we just decided to transfer across into the new one. And I think because it's the time when you don't have to unpick everything. I think the companies who find it hardest to become a B Corp are the ones who have to retroactively go back and unpick what they're doing. Whereas if you're just starting out, it's an incredible framework to guide you on what you want to achieve. So I would definitely recommend doing it sooner rather than later. The application process is a bitch. It takes forever, and you just think, why? How many questions? Who's the person who wrote this thing? Because it goes on for so long. But it's all in the right vein because it's really going into every bit of your business.
Nice.
Yeah. It is a bitch is an understatement. It's a lot of hard work. I think there might be some criteria, like I think you have to have been operating for 2 years, or there might be something or an interim stage. But just do it. Look, it's probably the most comprehensive framework out there to look at all aspects of your business. And we went in a little bit cocky, and it properly humbled us in terms of we thought, oh, we're doing all the right things, we're reducing our environmental emissions and blah blah blah. And you suddenly realize, oh my God, there's these areas of governance, of community, of how you kind of like all of the kind of processes and stuff that were in my head. It was like, if I get hit by a big red bus tomorrow, all of that goes with me, right? So everything needed to be put into process, and it just helped us review all aspects of our business. But my recommendation would be, get in now, because there are so many big brands that are becoming B Corp. The brand equity surrounding B Corp is only going to grow. If you can get into that community earlier, it's going to mean a lot more. It's going to be a really good differentiator. So it's a lot of work, but it's a really good process to go through, I think.
Nice. Nathan?
I mean, we're actually not a B Corp yet. So I guess what we can say is that, it is a lengthy process, but it's one that is worth undertaking either right at the beginning or maybe when you do have a bit of help. So if that, whilst it's very important, obviously you also need to be keeping your eye on other things. So just to take that on board.
Just balance out. I'm going to quickly celebrate with a BCorp beer. Brewdog have crossed the line, and they're shouting very loudly about it all. But they sent some beer, so I'm going to drink one of those. Ryan would like to know, Celia, did your Kickstarter organically fly, or did you invest in a paid for PR social strategy, so crowdfunding?
So we did Kickstarter. We decided to put a really small amount. I think it was about $2,000 into PR behind it. So just like an agency who could get in touch with publications. And again, like that was amazing. But I think it was the hype that suddenly came up because David Attenborough had just dropped Blue Planet 2 like 2 months before. And so there was such a swirl of like all the press trying to find companies like ours who were trying to reduce plastic waste that we got caught up in that. And it was really good to have a press agency who could help with that. So it's one of those things to be mindful for. I think you do need like a little bit of help with it, but I wouldn't overly invest because usually at that time you kind of need the money for a reason. But yeah, it was a lot for us timing.
Anyone else been involved with crowdfunding? No, stayed away.
Yeah, not with crowdfunding. We have taken funding recently, but not through crowdfunding. So, and equally that was quite a like important and not necessarily lengthy, but something that really took a lot of focus for the business. And that's so it's just something to take on board, that there's a lot to think about when you're funding, and like don't always have a plan A, have like a plan B, D, C, and D as well.
Definitely. Question here for you, Tom, from Damaris. I'm at the beginning stages of launching a creative agency. How do you differentiate yourself in such an oversaturated market?
I think it's the same. This advice would apply to any business. I think go for a niche and don't be apologetic about it. I think it's the only reason why we were able to start off was because we had a very specific niche about helping to tell creative stories around social and environmental issues. We wouldn't have existed without it. So find a niche that you are more passionate about than any other agency owner out there, and go for it kind of unreservedly, I would say.
Yeah, I love building on what you just said. I love Seth Godin's talk about finding your minimum viable audience. So not just build an MV product, but find the smallest possible audience in the world that will love what you do. That you design this almost for one person, right? and then iterate. And hopefully if there's more than 10 of them, you've got business. If there's not, that's cool. Move on. Final question for all three of you to wrap up. And thank you so much for the last hour, because I know you're working hard online a lot, and everyone that's listening in as well. Thank you for being here. We're going to break out into rooms for conversations in a minute. But for Celia, Nathan, and Tom, why does branding matter? Like for you, what your mission you're on, the journey you're on, the career you're on, why does branding matter to what you're doing? Celia?
I think we're in an age right now where people are looking for things and they're looking to belong somewhere. And, we used to get this a lot from, I don't know, religion. And now we really want to feel like we're contributing, the decisions that we're making and the products that we're buying are meaning something. And so brand really is important. Now, you're not, with everything that you do with your wallet, you're not just buying some cereal or buying some socks. You're deciding who you want to invest in and who you want to bring into your life. And that's why brand has become so important. And also it's a statement. It's something that you wear on your chest, like a Finisterre jumper. It's something that you use to define you when you go out and talk to people and meet people. So it's incredibly important. And now we're seeing this added layer of importance of the whole environmental angle, the fact that we all know now that we are in essentially a crisis, and therefore people have to decide, which line you want to be on. Do you want to be on this side of it, or do you want to be on that side of it? And I think that added layer has become so interesting because it's meant that a lot of companies have had to really step up in the way that they communicate their environmental values and the way that they want to go forward. So it's, for me, like a really interesting time for brands, because that environmental thing is almost now becoming a have to rather than a nice to have.
Yeah, you don't want to be on the outside. You're going to join the dancing man or woman in the middle. So ladies, time to switch to Dame if you haven't already. Nathan, why does branding matter to you?
I think arguably it's the most important part for us. It is our identity and what can't be taken from us. Like, you know, obviously the product itself is something we're passionate about, and it's definitely important, but our belief is that, you know, realistically, however unique it is, however different it is, that, you know, there's people out there that could look to copy it, look to change it. However, the brand is something that can't be copied. What you stand for, what you believe in, like how you communicate that to the consumer, all of that, you know, comes together to create this brand that is you and is your voice. And therefore I think like it is the most critical part, and that's why we invested in that initially. That was what our money went towards, and also like our first hire was someone to come in around the whole brand management. So yeah, like that for us is just critical.
And my dream is that Denzel's does a collaboration with my other favorite pet brand, Bruce's Doggy Daycare. So there you go.
Nice.
Just shout out. I'm not sponsored by them, but they're great.
They are great.
Tom, first, last question, last chance to you. Why does branding matter in this world?
I think as the entrepreneur and like the founder, which I think most people are on this in the group, for me, it's about legacy. I think when you first set up your business, there's so much pride you have in the fact that it was your hands that made everything and delivered everything. But for me, I think when you transition from being a business and you're just delivering everything to being a brand, is where you can step out and it operates as an organism in its own right. You know, there's nothing that makes me prouder now than not even having to do anything with a project and seeing it go out into the world and hear people finding out about Nice and Serious, like without me. Like if I can take a step back and that brand exists and continues and a legacy is created, that's what I want to create. And that's, I think, the power of a brand. It goes beyond the person into something else entirely.
That feels amazing. Well, you've all done that already. I'm sure you could step away and it would still survive. It wouldn't thrive quite the same way, but you created amazing things in this world. Thank you for your time tonight, Celia, Nathan, and Tom, and sharing so much. I've loved the conversation. Celia, Nathan, and Tom, thanks for everything tonight and all your amazing work building great stories in the world. Take care.
Really great chat.
Thanks for having me.
Cheers, guys.
Bye.